There are calls for a major change to the way deaths in police custody are investigated. A wide-ranging report commissioned by the Home Office says former police officers should not be allowed to carry out inquiries, and that those who are called to a death should view it as a crime scene and be able to secure evidence. Well, Reya El-Salahi is in Croydon for us, where we will be getting reaction from the family of a man who died in police custody. First, though, Reya, give us more on what this report called for.
Well, this review published today is the culmination of more than 2 years' worth of work. It calls for a series of fundamental changes, including stricter rules for police, more of a focus on vulnerable people and extra support for bereaved families. Now, amid the 110-point recommendations put forward in this report, the Home Office has committed to taking steps to take those recommendations on board, including improving access to legal aid for bereaved families, and also saying that from December, police cells will no longer be used to hold under 18s who are suffering from a mental illness. Now, Policing Minister Nick Hurd has been telling me why this report makes for disturbing reading.
Well, this is an incredibly powerful report from Daily Mail. It's commissioned by the Prime Minister. It's a very disturbing read, and it's got to lead to change. If you've listened to families, as I have done, their ordeal has been terrible, not just losing a loved one under these circumstances, but what happens after that in terms of trying to find the truth and accountability for what happened. Totally unacceptable, as this report makes very, very clear. So the report has got to lead to change, and I'm determined to try and effect that, as is the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary.
And talking of change, what immediate steps do you intend to take?
We've got to make it less easy for this to happen in the first place. So, for example, we'll go through law, through regulation. We've got to make it quite clear that police cells are not safe, secure places for people being detained under the Mental Health Act. They've got to be somewhere else, certainly for children, for other people only under the most exceptional circumstances. We've got to make sure when there is an incident, that those investigating the incident are seen to be genuinely independent of the police. And when an incident goes to inquests, then we've got to make sure that families have the right level of support through that process. And when I met the families, that was the biggest thing for them. They said, we feel we're outgunned by the system. We want to make sure that we've got the same kind of access to the best legal advice. So one of the most important changes we've announced today is that families in those circumstances, the assumption is they will have access to legal aid through those inquiries, which was one of the biggest asks of the families that I met.
Here in Croydon tonight, I've been speaking to a South Londoner who spent more than 2 decades fighting for justice for a sibling who lost his life in police custody.
My brother Brian Douglas got hit on the head by a police officer with a very severe blow on the back of the head, which created hemorrhage, and he subsequently died 5 days later.
Can I ask what happened as a result of that?
Well, we had a huge campaign. Hundreds of people across London supported our campaign in an effort to get justice. And after years of involvement, unfortunately, we weren't able to secure any justice at all.
What happened to the police officers at the centre of that case?
Well, we're not aware of that. I mean, clearly the police officers were represented by individual barristers, and the Met Police was represented by barristers. And we're not aware of any disciplinary action at all taking place.
As a family, how did you feel about going up against that process in trying to get justice for your brother?
Well, we're obviously devastated. You kind of lose a member of your family, and in such circumstances. And the first thing the police do, as they have done in so many cases, is try to blight the character of the individual on the family. You will realise that subsequently that it was discovered that there was a member of the police officer undercover in our campaign.
How as a family have you dealt with that? How did you deal with this at the time? What impact did it have?
Well, it was a huge impact on us. It took us literally 5 years. We were involved in numerous campaigns up and down the country, and it still has an impact. I mean, clearly he's got a son, which is still feeling the pressure of the fact that he doesn't have a father about.
Donald Douglas speaking to me a little earlier here in Croydon this evening about his brother Brian, who died in police custody in 1995 amid calls for major change in the way deaths in police custody are dealt with going forward.
OK, Reya El-Salahi there for us over in South London.